It's just you, Andy. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to This is Crazy. Things are not working right. I'm not working right. But anyway, it's Wednesday morning. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. We're gonna try and get through this hour, at least I am, or I'm just gonna rely on my lovely and talented co-host, Andy, to carry the show. Good morning, Andy.
Oh, I see you up there. You're good.
So none of the intros happened. It was so funny because we have a brand new intro in honor of our merger with DLF, and it goes from the peppy rap to kind of the slow jam, and I was just thinking, you know what? It's growing on me, especially today, and it didn't happen. So there's that. But anyway, we have a lot to talk about this morning. There were 4 states that held primary elections yesterday. Maybe you're not aware, the primary is still going on. And we had some big progressive wins, not just in candidates, but in policy that we want to talk about today. And then something super cool is launching today that you need to be aware of and you need to be a part of. So we're going to talk.
It's not from SpaceX.
No, it has nothing to do with aliens or anything else, but stay tuned because we're actually going to talk about that and send you a special invitation so that you can join this. And I cannot stress enough how history making this project is, because when I went out and checked and looked at it before we signed on this morning, I am just blown away by what's already happening. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But Andy, what's going on with you? Anything that we need to talk about?
No. Anything I want to talk about bores the fuck out of you. So
it's baseball. That's fine. Okay.
No, I don't want to just talk about baseball, but
okay.
Based on there's other sports,
right? Which I like a lot of other sports. I am a football nut, U.S. American football. I grew up playing soccer, which is international football, but I have always been of the opinion that if you're not really into a sport, but you go and see it live, then you'll be into it. And I had to change that entire worldview because I went to a baseball game and I was still, no, couldn't do it. So it was...
You're still not old enough.
Apparently not, because there must be something else going on at a baseball game besides the game that makes it exciting that I'm just not aware of.
Drinking.
But see, I can go to a football game and do that same thing. And then let's remember that a beer at a stadium is, 10 ounces for what, $10 now? I don't know what's the price of a beer at the stadium.
Yeah, well, it depends where you are. Right? In Canada, it's a second mortgage.
No, I bet, and they're just making it hand over fist in Canada, I'm sure. But I can't do it. So what I typically do is I live in Chicago and I'm home with the Bears. I am not a Bears fan, but my son is. So whenever the Denver Broncos come here, usually preseason games, we get tickets to that, and it's usually frigid cold. And we go and we have hot chocolate and coffee and whatever and freeze our butts off in the nosebleed. Although I will say this, Soldier Field, there are no bad seats. No bad seats. So if you get cracktacular tickets, you are going to enjoy that game. So
I think so. And I wonder, if you're a football fan, it really doesn't matter where you sit, right? Because you've got the Jumbotron or whatever they call it in the stadium, the big TV that can show you everything that you can't see from you just have to duck when the Budweiser blimp goes over.
That's right.
But because one of my bucket list things was going to see a home game by my favorite team, which was the Steelers, right, at Heinz Field. And it just so happened that my buddy and I went down there for the game. And we didn't know this. We arrived like late Saturday morning, right? So we could get down there, get to the hotel, go around, see some of the area around, PNC Park and Heinz Field and all of the stuff around the where the three rivers all come together. And we happened to go into a bar, and there were a whole shit ton of young people with wearing their school colors, and we had no idea. Well, what's this about, right? And it was Notre Dame versus Penn State.
Oh, oh goodness! Well, good game, good game.
Well, so the two of us waited till just before game time, or actually just after game time, and then we went out and got a couple of scalp tickets so that we could go to see the game. And oh my God, two totally different experiences. But so the bonus game was Saturday night, and then they played at I think it was a 4 p.m. start. At Heinz Field. They were playing the Bills, right? And in Ontario, that's really the only team that you have any real exposure to in Ontario, because Buffalo is so close, right? And the Bills have been so horrible for so long that it's kind of like in the Toronto Maple Leafs, if you're a hockey fan, because they haven't won anything since the 60s. And so, I've always been a Steelers fan and only really wanted to go to a Bills game if it was a busload of Canadians going down there just in order to drink and really not even know who the teams are playing. But unless they are playing Pittsburgh and then going down there and sitting in my Pittsburgh gear and, not being real comfortable, but, enjoying the game anyways. So it was just one of those bucket list weekends for me, right? At the end of the night, it just so happened in the hotel we were staying in, one of the Steelers players had at least a dozen family members staying in the same hotel. It was William Gay, who was a defensive halfback. And so we end up sitting up in the lobby with them up until the wee hours of the morning, and Willie dropped by. So that was another really cool thing that we got to do, right? Because these guys, they look huge on TV with the equipment, with the shoulder pads and everything, but most of the defensive halfback guys that aren't on the line are really not that big, because they've got to be super fast, right? And so he was maybe an inch taller than me, and I'm 5 foot fuck all. And so, it was really an interesting experience to actually get, because I was a football player all through high school and all that stuff. So
you played football at 5 foot
one of those
nothing?
weekends that worked out perfectly.
Okay, that's impressive. I didn't peg you for a football player because you are a little short. But
yeah, but I'm built like a fire hydrant, right? So put me in the defensive secondary, and when I hit you, I can't reach up past your waist, so you're going down.
Or I'd put you on the offensive line to hold that line, but it's not.
No, people just jumped me.
Okay, right over you.
Try to grab their legs as they hop over top of me.
Nice. See, that would have been worth seeing, but so okay, I can totally participate in football analogy. Baseball, not so much, because it's mind numbing to me. But anyway, so let's pivot a little bit and get to one thing I want to rant about a little bit, and we got through this when we talked to Morris Pearl of the Patriotic Millionaires. So I just want to put these up real quick, and I'm just going to kind of beat the drum on these. Their organization has a sponsor of 2 pieces of legislation, and this is these should be no-brainers. This is to change the carried interest on investments to raise taxes on multimillionaires, right? So carried interest is not something that 98% of us really have to deal with too much, but this does target the more affluent people. These bills do not have co-sponsors yet. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why. We have all of these progressives and all of these people in the Senate and in the House today who say that they are all about changing finance reform and all of these things. Well, here are two bills that have been presented. So this is the one in the House, HR 1735. No co-sponsors whatsoever. So the other one that I want to put up here is this is the Senate bill. Same bill, S718, Carried Interest Fairness Act, no co-sponsors. So where's Chuck Schumer? Where are all these other people who should be signing on to this and saying, yeah, this is a way to rein in financing of our elections by the oligarchs? So if you were not aware of this and you missed our previous show, these two bills, post the links to them, call your representative and ask them to co-sponsor it so that it can get out of the House Ways and Means Committee in the House and actually get called up to be read in the Senate. So those two things I definitely want to call attention to before we get started here this morning because they're important. Right? So it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. So when we were talking about Citizens United and all of these other things, there are two actual bills here that are meaningful and will enact positive change. Who knows about them? Nobody.
Well, and I think that we all understand that and we can see that, right? But I don't think any of us are delusional enough to think that, you know, it being read in the Senate is going to garner anything more than a chuckle from that, right? But
right.
It is a record of a bill that has made it to the Senate. It will quite obviously get voted down by a humongous margin, but it is there, right? It has been, there is a record of it being there. It has been read in. The other thing that is changing that is another part of our show, which is we're probably transitioning to talk about here very soon, is about, you know, our like-minded candidates who possibly won a few elections last night.
Ah, yes. So yeah, let's talk about that then. So which state do you want to cover first? We had Michigan, Kansas, Missouri. Those were the big ones. Arizona also had their primary. Andy, I'm going to let you pick. Which state?
I think we should go right to Missouri. I think we should go with the number one story of the morning, right? That we have a lovely activist by the name of Cori Bush who squeaked out a victory last night against an incumbent that's been in power since the Mayflower.
Yeah, well, 11 terms, was it? So that's 20.
Yes, since 20, the 60s, their family.
This generation.
Between the father and the son, right? Apparently, this guy inherited the seed.
So there's another parallel, right? So we had an interview with, excuse me, Marie Newman in Illinois Congressional District 3. And she ran in 2018 against Dan Lipinski, who also inherited his seat from his father. So she ran twice, and on the second one, she prevailed. She won her primary. Now you have Cori Bush, who ran in 2018 and lost, but has run again, and this time she also won against somebody who had inherited their seat. So that's an amazing parallel. Right? And I think it also goes to what we've spoken about here quite often is that progressives, you don't have the money and you may not have the name recognition, and you're going up against an entity that is spending millions to defeat you. You may not get there in the first time, but look at what Cori did. Same thing that Marie Newman did. She was out on the front lines after 2018. She was in the community. She had a strong voice. She was pushing hard, and she had progressives who were already elected or in high-profile positions boosting her, right? So this
absolutely, and that's the key, right? Is that what you have to do is you have to learn from the experience of your first time running, right? Without any delusions of what's going to happen, right? The AOC was not the rule; she was the exception. She was like anybody that knows AOC describes her as the Energizer Bunny, right? That didn't stop, that did everything that she possibly could to get elected. She had all of the tumblers in the correct position. It was set up perfectly for her. She had an incumbent that didn't appear, right? The people of her district looked more like her than the incumbent. So it was a perfect scenario for her to win that. But those have all got to line up for you to win on your first ballot, right? It's just she's the exception. So without thinking that this is going to happen the first time, we've interviewed how many different people on our network alone that are running for the first time, right? That are absolutely unbelievable candidates that have all the proper policies, that understand MMT, right? That know everything the way it goes. They know their districts, they've lived there for a long time, but they were realistic about their chances the first time, right? And that's the key. If you can learn the things that you did correctly and the things that you can change and put that into play for 2 years later when you run again, you've sealed your fate, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with the changing environment and the Armageddon year that we're currently going through, right?
Right.
This is setting up progressives in 2022 to have a chance to take over the majority of Congress, which is insane.
Absolutely. And we had Warren Lynch on to talk about some of the progressive wins that have happened already all across the country. And it's just overwhelming the support that progressives are getting. And throughout, when I was going through and looking at comments, and I'm always interested in exit polls, not for the data, but for the comments from voters. And what you saw in all 4 of these states, and you see it consistently, is the comments always come down to, this person, I believe, will fight for me. And this is what they're talking about. They want somebody to represent them, a fighter, somebody who's strong, somebody who's out there already. And with Corey, she never left the headlines. And it wasn't that she was out there forwarding herself like a photo op. You would see her right in the front line of a Black Lives Matter rally and a protest and speaking truth to power, all of these things. You would see her out there over and over and over again. And I think the lesson here for prospective candidates, like you said, Andy, you may have to run once or twice because as voters, number one, we may not see your message the first time because we know you don't have that kind of money. But the flip side of that is also trust, right? We have zero trust for people in Congress, and every year we do the ratings and, cockroaches come out rated higher than Congress. However, that's not true of our own representative. I totally despise the representatives in Kentucky. But my own representative, I might have a more favorable opinion about. And this is part of where running twice to prove yourself and to actually walk the talk matters.
Oh, absolutely. You have so much going against you in your first time around, right? Because there's no way to deny that the centrist candidates have most of the financial backing. Like the vast majority of money that they can put posters up, they can put ads on TV, they can put ads in newspapers, they can put ads on social media, because they have basically an unlimited amount of money coming in from the oligarchs and the corporations and all that stuff, right? So especially this year, because the one true progressive tact for running a campaign or a successful campaign is taken away in a pandemic. The
Mhm.
door-to-door thing is gone. So you have all of these people that are trying to get the word out to their constituents in basically what can be described as a little bit more than a glorified echo chamber of people that are like-minded. Well, you don't have to convince those people to vote for you because they're already voting for you. It's the people that are the boomer age, right? That are older, that aren't necessarily even have a Twitter account, right? That the only way you can reach them and get them to come to talk to you is if you're knocking at their door. And in this, especially for people in the city of New York, where the epicenter was at the beginning of all this, that's impossible, right? So you're starting at such a deficit in your first run that really the only thing you can hope for is name recognition going into your second one, and then that sets you up, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So one pushback that I do want to give is most of us we deride the two major parties for and their supporters for being party over politics, right? But what we're seeing across the country is progressives doing the exact same thing. For example, Green Party members. Now, I happen to enjoy a really nice, cordial relationship with Green Party members locally. And I'm always surprised to hear that that is not the case nationwide, particularly in these down ballot races where Green candidates are non existent in a race, but you do have somebody like a Cori Bush or at a state level, another progressive running. Greens are either absent or what we're starting to see is Green Party members are actually um, pulling negative against a progressive candidate, regardless of which banner they run under. That to me is concerning because it shows either number one, some of these Green Party members are not all about it, or the Green Party itself has leadership and some of the membership has forgotten what the whole purpose was, right? So is it to get money for your party? Are you going to do the fallback like Democratic Party and their PACs have done, where it's all about your money and your paycheck? Or are you actually trying to enact progressive policy by helping progressives get elected, regardless of which banner they run under? Like, for example, Dan Whitfield, he's running as an independent. Where's the Green Party helping him? Where are other progressive parties or progressive groups helping somebody like Dan who is running as an independent? That needs to happen. And I think part of this, we can't get together on the left because we're so busy infighting, and that's kind of a problem. But
Well, the Green Party started at the wrong end, right? They started at the national level, right? They didn't build their foundation properly in order to run candidates at the foundational level, right? So they're finding that they can put a national candidate for president in, but they don't have the Green Party base in every state to ensure that they're even going to get 5% of the vote, right? And so that's problematic, right? We have, so the scenario that I can see right now that's happening is from several different vectors, which is amazing, right? Which is the way this has to happen, right? You have progressives that are basically infiltrating the Democratic Party, right? They're from the inside working out to try to change the power base of the Democratic Party, which has to happen. There's also the grassroots level progressive party, like the group we work for, which is the National Progressive Party, which is working on the template of the successful Vermont Progressive Party and duplicating that in all 50 states and working from the ground up, right? At the same time. Well, if you can get both of those fronts in this war working together, then you end up creating a place for progressives to go. And then what happens is the Green Party can benefit from that, right? You have the Progressive Party and the Green Party are each putting candidates forward because now it's possible to do so. And people can start to choose between good candidates based on policy, based on everything other than saying, well, he's not Trump, right?
Right. I am so hopeful for the day where I go and I look at my ballot and I have the tough choice of a progressive Dem, a Green Party progressive, or a National Progressive Party candidate, and I have to make a choice. That
Exactly.
is the ideal. And
Yes.
while we're squabbling, so just real quick, good morning to Mike who chimed in. Thank you for tuning in. And then Joel, and I got to put my glasses down to read this. Joel says it's a vestige of the same red versus blue party mentality, my party or no party, right? So that's kind of the either crabs in the barrel, or if I can't have it, nobody can. And then Joel also says if the values and principles match, the banner shouldn't. So this is, I think we have consensus here. And one of the things, if we can go back to Missouri real quick, Cori Bush, who managed to get in, so congratulations to Cori Bush and her entire campaign staff and the people of Missouri. So Missouri was also the state that had a number of progressives elected to the DNC. So
they also voted to extend the Medicaid option.
That's what I wanted to talk about this morning because my background is in health insurance and all of that sort of thing. Part of it. So, so with Medicaid, this is what was shocking to me. Prior to expansion of Medicaid, the eligibility was like 17%, 17, not 20% of the federal poverty level, which means that you had to be damn near destitute to qualify for Medicaid in Missouri. So I went out and looked at some of the stats here, and where it made no sense that they would not extend and expand it. So what it did was, if you made more than this paltry sum of 17% of the federal poverty limit, you were not eligible for any insurance assistance whatsoever from ACA or through whatever means. You had to pay for it on your own, to this huge gap of when you actually qualified for ACA and a subsidy, which is basically a loan against your pre-tax return for the next year. So people in Missouri were getting screwed. And what they did was they voted to expand Medicaid. And what this means is the federal government is going to pick up 90% of the cost for people here in Missouri. So I thought that the numbers here were pretty telling. So that is $15 billion is going to Missouri to cover their people. Now, of course, Medicaid is not an end-all be-all. There are still major parts of the country, including in Missouri, where there are zero providers, no doctors or hospitals will take Medicaid. However, it gives them a little bit of a lifeline, a little bit. So like in my county, there are no providers. So if someone is on Medicaid here, they're going to have to drive or take some sort of public transport for an hour or two to see a doctor. Same thing kind of happens in Missouri. However,
it's still possible.
Right. It gives them something.
Not being able to drive forever and not find anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So they're estimating it's going to cover an additional 352,000 neighbors in Missouri. So that's huge. And I want to stress that all of this, ACA was meant to be the incremental approach to a national healthcare program. So it's now over 10 years old. So I think we're coming away from it being incremental. So I'm very proud of the people of Missouri that you are looking out for each other. and that this program is going to go in and it's going to save your state money and help your people. However, we still need to move forward with Medicare for all because
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a step, right? It's a step.
it's a step.
You have in November, apparently your choices are, Trumpelstiltskin or nothing will fundamentally change Sleepy Joe,
Right.
right? Which are probably the two farthest away from Medicare policies of anybody in the United States.
Well,
right?
let's not be
So-
hypocrites, Andy. Let's not be hypocrites here on our show. We just finished talking about the Green Party and everything else. There are 4 candidates running for president, right? So you have Sleepy Joe, you have Fascist Trump, you have Howie Hawkins, who is a progressive on a solid progressive platform, and then you have Joe Jorgensen, who is fascist light. She's libertarian. So we do have 4. Let's be fair about it. So this is my question for, okay, so yes, we want to defeat Trump, but I happen to live in Illinois. I can vote for Howie. And that is my privilege in this state, right? So not everybody has that. If I lived in Ohio still, then I would be very wary about that. But as a progressive, I like his platform. I should be allowed to vote for him. And oh boy, if I can help Greens get to that 5% nationwide, why wouldn't I?
Absolutely, and that's something that everyone is going to have to come to terms with in November on their own.
That's exactly right.
Stop the fucking vote shaming, for God's sake.
Yeah, and I come from, a very staunch Republican family, and my grandfather was the patriarch, and it was drilled into all of us that you may not ask somebody who they voted for. You just don't do it because that is a form of voter intimidation. And it was just, you don't do it. So when we're seeing all of this stuff on social media, and my pushback to these people who are like, well, if you don't vote for Joe, you're voting for Trump. And my pushback is, are you phone banking right now?
Yeah.
Are you doing socially distanced canvassing right now? And the answer is always no. I'm like, well, you better lace up your shoes. Rather than being here on social media telling me who I can and cannot vote for, you need to put in the effort for your candidate. Good luck. So that's the way I feel about it. But so we had a Medicaid expansion for Missouri, and then a bunch of down ballot races that were really interesting. Ballotopedia is a go-to source if you want to check out some of those. But now I want to pivot to Kansas. Something really interesting happened in Kansas, and our friends in the Democratic Party are once again trying to manipulate primaries. This time it almost backfired on them. So one of the races that I thought was interesting is Kris Kobach. Kris Kobach was, he is a Trump acolyte. He's a full-on fascist. He was in his own state of Kansas trying so hard to suppress the vote. He came up with these horrific voter ID laws that actually prevented Republicans from being able to vote. He was appointed to Trump's voter integrity committee or commission early on with Ohio State Ken Blackwell. Ken Blackwell, who stole my vote twice while I was in Ohio. My right to vote was taken from me, and I was moved to a provisional ballot in Ohio. They don't count provisionals, so twice. And no, I will never forgive him for that. We actually had a UN report lambasting Blackwell for how he handled that election. All the UN observers were in Ohio that year. So Ken Blackwell and Kris Kobach went to this Trump voter integrity commission, and they were trying to really suppress the vote nationwide. So Kobach decided that with all of his prior success at losing elections, he was going to run for state senate, not state senate, but for the Senate seat. This was interesting So what happened was a Democratic PAC ran by a guy named Jim, who's an attorney in Kansas. They were taking Super PAC. Super PAC does not have to disclose donors, but they spent, what is it, $5,298,000 to boost Kobach against his Republican challenger. So I'm not sure what the logic was there about trying to boost him in front of all of these voters. But what it ended up doing was terrifying and pissing off some immigration and voting right activists in the state. So the Atlantic had a really nice write-up a few days ago about this particular PAC. So we've seen this where the DCCC will come into a contested race and they will try to boost their corporate candidate over a progressive. Here you have them doing it in the Republican race. And the theory is that they thought that Kobach would be easier to beat in the general. So they spent $5 million, $5.2 million to boost Kobach. And it's an amazing turn of events because $5 million for a progressive candidate, that wins a race. That wins the primary and the general. And here it's just one PAC out of Kansas that thought that they were going to do something and it completely miserably failed. Miserably. So thankfully, Kobach did not win his primary. So now you have a more of a moderate Republican. And I say that gingerly because even moderate Republicans are moving so far to the right that it's getting sketchy. But yeah, way to go, Super PAC, in wasting $2.5 million. Or I'm sorry, $5.2 million. Dyslexic. So that was interesting. And then let's see, who else did we have? Okay, so that was Roger Marshall, who prevailed against Kris. And then in Arizona, no surprises there. Mark Kelly won for that Senate seat. So here again, we had talked about for months, if we can maintain the House, and now we have all these progressives who are being elected or going into the general. So you're going to flip the House from Democrat to progressive Democrat. And then in the Senate, we're going to flip the Senate from Republican controlled to Democrat. And Kelly is another one of those in Arizona that is expected to win in the general. So more and more you're getting these seats rolling. So there are a number of seats that could flip both of those. So now what happens? You have a Democratic controlled Senate and a Democratic controlled House. So that bodes really well for the coming election cycle. So for 2 years, there should be no excuse in getting sweeping legislation passed.
Right,
That's
and
the hope.
the other thing that people don't realize is that, you know, we talk about, well, if you don't vote for Biden, we get Trump for another 4 years. You know, you win back the Senate and the House, right? He's a lame duck president.
Right.
He's an orange lame duck president. But, you know, it doesn't really, this 4 years of posturing and blaming poor people for everything, and, you know, you have another 4 years of building a progressive base. You know, these are the cards you've been dealt, right? You're gonna just have to, you can only play those cards. So deal with what you can, and hope you've still got enough time on the back end to change things before we lose the ability to live on this planet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that deadline's looming over us pretty significantly. But yeah, to the point, there's more going on here than just the top of the ticket race. This is why it's so important. So even if Biden's not your guy, okay, I get it. Then what you really need to consider is an undervote. If you cannot make a decision on the presidential race, you still need to vote, because all of these down ballot races, particularly in your state and your county, affect you far more than, you know, perhaps the top of the ticket race. And this is where a race like Cori Bush and the all these ballot referendums went in. That's why these are so important. So I want to switch now to Michigan, who also had their primary. So Rashida Tlaib, holy cow, she was at 63% versus 30-something percent. They're still counting mail-in ballots, but that one is expected to stand. But what I was looking at was levy increases. So we always think of Michigan as this deep red militia-run state, and that is not the case. It's simply not. I think you will find that people in Michigan agree on far more than they disagree on. What we see from a national level, because it you know, it's clickbait, are the loudest, most divisive voices, the militias, all of these things. That makes for great TV. And I would point to the election in Kalamazoo as an example of this. So in Kalamazoo, you had a number of ballot referendums and levy increases for schools, for the 911 system. There's a building that's apparently starting to sink a little bit, and voters there overwhelmingly agreed to raise the levy to pay for these programs. And what that means is they've agreed to pay more in taxes every year to fund these things. Well, that
Now,
seems
is that just property tax, or is that across the board?
Mostly it's property tax. I haven't looked at how Kalamazoo in particular pays their taxes, but in general, it goes to your property taxes. So if you own a business and the facility, if you own a building, if you own property in that area, what's going to happen is next year your total tax bill is going to go up, and that's shared across everybody in your district. So it's at a county level, at a city level, things like that. So those people agreed that, yeah, we need to make that investment. And that's not something you typically hear about when you're talking about Republicans or vice versa, or whatever. So
Or Americans in general that break out in hives when they hear the word tax.
which to me, and I was having this conversation yesterday about property taxes. So it makes sense that you're going to vote for a higher property tax for things that you actually use and invest in, right? But when I was talking to somebody about Medicare for All, and happened to mention that a program like Medicare for All enacted at a national level will drop our property taxes 40 to 60% overnight. They kind of blinked at me, and I'm like, because you don't recognize that right now a large portion of your property taxes is paying insurance for every elected official, from all the way, you know, if you cover it for a trustee, to your mayor, to everyone else, you are paying their insurance all the way at the state level and the federal level for your state and other states right now. And they kind of blinked at me. So when we just spoke about Missouri enacting Medicaid, what they did was they cover the cost for everyone at about $7,000 to $8,000 a year per person for 325 people. Under Medicare for All, that drops down to about $3,500 to $4,000. So you save off the top for all of those people, plus all of the millions that you're spending for every teacher, every municipal worker, every state elected official, and every congressperson. You've dropped that rate too. So if you want to give people a huge stimulus, this one program alone not only covers everyone without the need for insurance through an employer, not only covers everyone without the need to have to go find a doctor who accepts it, because everybody will, but you are now reducing your property taxes and saving yourself thousands every year as a homeowner or business owner in your county.
And on top of that, if you think that makes people blink, you talk about the fact that you now have an entire industry that is going to virtually be shutting down, right? Which is the health insurance industry. And all of the people that are employed in that, if Medicare for All is passed, because there's no need for medical insurance companies anymore, right? And there are a lot of economists that in the know that will say that there is enough people in that industry that will lose their job that need to be transitioned to other industries, that it may be possible just to offset the decreased spending in the economy by creating an extra tax cut on the level because of the reason that we pay taxes in the first place, to re-stimulate the economy from that loss of participation in the economy when those people lose their jobs.
Right. Well, let's talk about the real numbers, right? We talked about Missouri, who expanded Medicaid and is now taking the federal benefit, and they're covering about 325,000 neighbors. So if the insurance agents in this country for health insurance covering medical expenses, now you will still need insurance for cosmetic things and elective stuff, but for the majority of it, we are talking about a total of about 400,000 employees nationwide. Most people think it's millions and millions and millions of workers. No, those people are in India because insurance companies outsource a lot of their customer service and processing and things like that. So we're I don't want to say only, because every person matters, but to put it in terms that you understand, it's about 400,000 people who need to transition. Right now, today, we have, what, 50 million people unemployed? So what we could do is a federal jobs guarantee and all of these investment things to take care of everybody at the same time we enact Medicare for all. And, oh, by the way, we save money as a country,
Right.
as a people.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
And if and it's conceivable that Medicare for All as a policy has more traction than any of the other progressive policies that were, instigated by Senator Sanders and, pushed forward by progressive groups now, more so than other progressive policies, which would really help the situation if there was a federal jobs guarantee as well, right? Because then any of the people in those industries that lost their jobs would be able to transition into a job guarantee program at a base wage and benefits without having to worry about feeding their family or losing their home, right? Because there's no shortage of things to do in the United States. There's just a shortage of paid work, right? There's tons of stuff to do. And a federal job guarantee could absorb all of those people when Medicare for All ever comes into play and transitions those people into unemployed workers, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And Joel actually weighed in here. So Mike was talking about his local county where they're just taking away benefits, which I totally agree with. County board members, your civil servants, get your health insurance somewhere else. But Joel was talking about the deflection from how are we going to pay for it. We've talked about it here many times, and hopefully we're going to get Dr. Fidel Kaboub on to talk to our own 7 and kind of go through some of those things. Where do we go from here from an economist point of view? But before we get out of here this morning, I teased at the beginning of our show about this really cool project that is, and I can't, this sounds like hyperbole, I know it does, but this is literally history in the making with this project. And I was a little skeptical at first, but when I went out and looked at the official launch and what was going on, it really caught my attention. So one of the things I'm talking about is, okay, so we complain about antitrust laws and social media, and I know the right says that they're being they're being marginalized, and their content, even though it's factually inaccurate and completely wrong and detrimental to people's health, they're saying that their First Amendment rights are being infringed. Well, when it comes to a private enterprise like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, you have to go by their standards, right? So, like the people who want to go into Walmart without a mask, great. Free market, Walmart said you need to wear a mask and your freedoms end at the front door. So, same thing happens with antitrust laws and community standards with Facebook. Like, there's certain things that we can't say and remain on Facebook. So, we have to adhere to that, or whatever. But there's been such an effort now to develop new competitive tools, and one of those is Neo Citizen. So I'm going to post the link to that. It's neocitizens with an s.com, and they have launched this amazing program that you can be a part of, Trump's Wall. So we know that Trump, from the beginning, from his campaign, said, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. And then every time we have an update on it, there's some horrific development where eminent domain has taken land from our farmers and our ranchers. The wall itself, money is just being stolen by contractors and friends, or you can't possibly build a wall here. And then kudos to groups like Cards Against Humanity, who bought sections of the land and are fighting eminent domain so Trump cannot build this wall. Well, Neo Citizens is building a wall, and this, I think, is so cool. So what they're doing is they put up Trump's wall of shame. And just like a little park where the park needs to sell bricks to finance it, what they are doing is you can buy a section of this wall and write in any message that you want. And that is going to go into the permanent record. So your little, whether you buy a little bit or a lot, you can put your own public message, you can put your group, your identity, anything you want on this segment in a virtual wall, and have it remain forever. And then all of it's going to be transition. It's global. So here's where it got really cool. When I went out and looked at it, there are people from Oslo and, all over the world. I saw people from Africa, from Europe, from the UK. All of these places are already buying sections. Why? Because what we do here affects them too. And they've been watching us, and you've seen it on social media, Andy, you've seen it, where somebody in South Korea, like the K-pop, they are so terrified about what's happening to us as people and how it affects them that they are actually buying into this program right now. So you can go out there and see the messages from people all over the world who are weighing in on this program, and look at it as it truly is, a historical milestone.
Record of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like a time capsule. So the other thing that we are so grateful for, the creators of Neo Citizens, is they have allowed us as a progressive media company to share in some of the fundraising. So we did not ask for it. They came to us and they said, we are going to support groups that we think are really important in the fight ahead. So they are supporting the ACLU, a fund for kids' defense in immigration court. And there are like 9 or 10 different groups, and we get to be one of them too. So we thank them profusely for not only inviting us to it, but recognizing how important it is to have progressive media moving forward with whatever happens after the election, so that we get this kind of information, and you get credible resources for progressive policy. So we are participating in this. We will have more information coming out, but Neo Citizens is definitely what you need to check out, and we will post it here on our network, and we hope that you share it So if you do decide to participate and you want to buy a piece of this, in the drop-down menu, it just asks who referred you here, and you'll see Digital Liberation Front on the list. If you keep that in there, then we actually get some support and a little bit of the funds raised from this entire project. So we thank them profusely, and we will be making sure that you get your invitation, personal invitation, to this wonderful project. So.
And wouldn't it be great to send old Donald a message that's going to live forever?
Mm-hmm. He can't build the wall, but we can. So,
That's right.
so let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. And I don't care where you stand on the political spectrum, outside of the far right fascists. This project has really got to appeal to you. That, and let's give Facebook a little bit of competition, right? Free market. And let's promote neo-citizens. So I think that is a wonderful way to help them launch their brand and their platform. They are in beta right now, so you can see the potential of it, and get involved in groups and all sorts of things like that. So it's really starting to take off, and I noticed that people are joining it in droves now. So it's a wonderful way to not have to worry about whether your information is being censored or if somebody's collecting your data, like we see in Facebook chats and things like that. So yeah, Neo Citizens, NEO Citizens with an S.com. So we'll post that link here. So Andy, what is your first message going to be on your brick in the wall?
My first message on my first brick in the wall is, if you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding.
I should have known. Yeah, musical
You can't have
reference.
any pudding if you don't eat your meat.
Right. Exactly. So perfect. So yeah, we will have more information on that coming out. And then let's see, I'm trying to think what else is coming this week. Oh, Friday. If you haven't seen our website yet, and even Andy doesn't know this because I didn't tell him. Sorry, Andy.
I don't know anything.
We have this tremendous article by a New York Times and About.com writer, Andy Summers, who published this comprehensive piece on the myths of exit polling and election fraud. So it's kind of a heavy, detailed piece, which is exactly what you want on somebody who's laying the groundwork for dispelling these myths. But we're going to have Andy Summers on Friday to talk about his article and what this really means. So he will break it down for us in a simplified way. And if you want to, do your homework and read his article, it is out on our website right now. We'll also post that in the links as well. So that's all I got this morning. Just a ton of good information. And
one Carrie and two Andys. That won't be confusing.
no, I was wondering about that. How are we gonna? Okay, it's an Andy sandwich.
For the one day, I will change my name to Svetlana.
There you go. And you have to use that accent. So
yes, I will use that accent.
Excellent. So
I'll move my eyebrows up and down when I talk.
I'm gonna get screenshots of that. Yeah.
Please tell me. Tell me, how long did it take for you to write this article? Of course. Andy.
Right, exactly. So, all right, that's it for us. And yeah, I think that's it. We're out of here. So check with us on Friday morning, and we will have our special guest with us, and then go out and be part of this wall. It'll be excellent. History making. So very good.
So